I worked as a 911 dispatcher for almost 6 years in a mid-sized county in Ohio. And in that time, you hear a lot of things that stick with you. Most calls, even the scary ones, have a clear beginning, middle, and end. This one still doesn't. And it's the only call in 6 years I've never been able to fully close in my own head. It came in around 3 a.m. on a slow weeknight, one of those shifts where you're mostly answering wrong numbers, and the occasional noise complaint. Caller ID showed a residential address on the edge of the county, a house I later learned had been vacant and for sale for almost a year. A woman's voice, calm, almost eerily calm, said she needed someone to come check on her basement because something was standing at the bottom of the stairs that shouldn't be there. I asked for her name and confirmed the address. Standard protocol. She gave a name that matched nothing in our system. No utility records, no prior calls. Nothing tied to that specific address at all. I kept her on the line while dispatching a patrol unit, asking her to stay upstairs, away from the basement door, the way we're trained to guide anyone reporting a possible intruder. She said very calmly, "It doesn't use the stairs the way we do." Then the call disconnected. Not hung up, disconnected, the way calls do when a line simply goes dead mid-transmission. No dial tone lingering after. I tried calling the number back immediately. It rang once, and then gave the standard, "This number is not in service" message, the kind you get for numbers that have never actually been assigned to anyone. The patrol unit arrived at the address about 6 minutes later. Vacant house, exactly as records showed, doors locked, no signs of forced entry, no signs anyone had been inside recently at all. No power connected to the property, which meant no working phone line, no landline service of any kind, active at that address for months, confirmed later by the utility company. I logged the call exactly as it happened, the way we're required to for any incoming call regardless of outcome. My supervisor pulled the recording the next day out of routine review and asked me directly if I'd taken it as some kind of prank. I told him I genuinely didn't think so, based on the caller's tone, based on how the call had disconnected, based on everything about how it felt in the moment. He listened to the recording himself, went quiet for a long moment, and told me he wanted a copy kept on file separately from our normal system, which wasn't standard procedure at all for what should have been a routine, if strange, call. I still work dispatch, different county now. I still think about that call more than any other from my entire career, especially the specific way she said, "It doesn't use the stairs the way we do." Like she genuinely expected me to understand exactly what that meant, without any further explanation. I never found out if anyone checked that basement directly. I've never asked. I bought the contents of an abandoned storage unit at an auction outside Phoenix, Arizona about a year ago. The kind of auction where you're allowed to look inside for exactly 2 minutes before bidding. No digging through boxes, just a quick visual scan through the open door. I do this occasionally as a side hustle, reselling furniture and household goods I find. Usually nothing more exciting than old bookshelves and kitchen sets. This particular unit looked promising from the doorway. Furniture, sealed boxes stacked neatly, nothing obviously junk or damaged. The unit had belonged to someone who'd stopped paying rent on it almost 3 years earlier, according to the auction house paperwork, with no further contact information on file and no family ever coming forward to claim it, which apparently happens more often than most people would think. Going through it properly after winning the bid, most of it was completely ordinary. Furniture, kitchenware, boxes of old clothes that smelled faintly of cedar. But tucked in the very back, behind a dresser pushed against the far wall, I found a single sealed cardboard box with "Do not open, call first" written across the top in thick black marker. No phone number included anywhere on the box itself. No name, nothing. I opened it anyway. mostly out of the same curiosity that gets everyone into these situations if they're honest with themselves. Inside were dozens of handwritten letters, all addressed to the same name, all from the same sender, spanning what looked like almost a decade based on the postmarks stamped across each envelope, all completely unopened, still sealed exactly as they'd arrived. I opened one, just one, telling myself I was trying to identify the previous owner to potentially return the box to family if I could track anyone down. It was written by someone claiming to be the person's estranged sister, describing in careful detail a recurring dream she'd had about her brother for years. Always the same dream, according to her own description. Always ending with her waking up at exactly 3:17 a.m., feeling like someone had been standing at the foot of her bed the entire time she slept. I checked several more letters after that, unable to stop myself. Every single one described the exact same dream, same specific details, same exact time, written independently across nearly 10 years of correspondence without any indication anywhere that the sister had ever once received a response back. I tried locating her through the return address printed on the envelopes. The address didn't exist at all, according to postal records I checked online. Hadn't ever been a valid registered address as far as I could determine through multiple searches, despite every single letter clearly having been mailed and postmarked normally through the actual functioning postal system over the entire span of a decade. I still have that box sitting in my closet. I haven't opened another letter since that first one, though I've thought about it more times than I'd like to admit. I keep meaning to throw the whole thing away entirely, and every single time I try, I end up putting it back on the shelf instead. Last month, for the first time since I found that box, I woke up at exactly 3:17 a.m. for no reason I could identify or explain to myself. I haven't mentioned that part to anyone until right now. I worked the overnight front desk at a mid-sized hotel in downtown Denver for almost 2 years during grad school. Mostly quiet shifts, occasional drunk guests wandering in from nearby bars, the usual overnight routine. This happened during my second year on the job, on a night I still think about whenever I'm alone in an elevator, anywhere, in any building. The hotel had 13 floors total, except officially it was labeled 14, because the building skipped the number 13 entirely on every floor indicator and every elevator button, which is actually common enough in a lot of older buildings that I never thought twice about it when I first started working there. Around 2 a.m., a guest called down to the front desk, sounding genuinely shaken, said the elevator had stopped between floors on her way up to her room, and the doors had briefly opened onto what she described as a floor that shouldn't exist. Dimly lit, completely bare. No carpet anywhere, no room numbers visible on any doors, before the elevator continued moving normally and delivered her to her actual floor just seconds later. Doors opening onto the familiar hallway exactly as expected. I apologized for the trouble, assumed some kind of mechanical glitch or a stuck sensor, and told her I'd have maintenance look into it first thing in the morning, which was our standard response for anything elevator related during overnight hours when no technician was on call. About 40 minutes later, purely out of curiosity, and because the lobby was completely dead that night with nobody around, I rode the elevator myself, watching the floor indicator closely the entire way up from the ground floor. Between the 12th and 14th floor markers, for less than 2 full seconds, the doors actually did open, briefly, onto a floor with no number displayed on the indicator panel at all. Dim emergency lighting only, bare gray concrete, no carpet, no doors, no room markers of any kind visible in that brief window, before the elevator continued moving upward as if absolutely nothing unusual had just happened. I mentioned it to our maintenance supervisor the next morning, expecting a straightforward technical explanation about building structure or an old mechanical shaft nobody had bothered updating. He got quiet for a moment, told me the building's original blueprints, which he'd actually looked into years earlier after a similar guest complaint from before my time, did in fact show a genuine 13th floor that had been officially sealed off during a major renovation decades before the hotel changed ownership, with the elevator wiring simply reprogrammed to skip announcing it entirely, though apparently not fully prevented from briefly accessing it. Under certain conditions, nobody on staff had ever fully diagnosed or explained. He told me maintenance crews had tried permanently correcting the wiring more than once over the years he'd worked there, and that each attempt had mysteriously failed for unrelated technical reasons that never quite added up on paper, until eventually the hotel just stopped trying altogether and quietly asked staff not to discuss it with guests unless directly asked about it first. I finished out my remaining 2 years there without it happening to me directly again, though 2 other co-workers separately mentioned similar brief elevator stops on different occasions during my time on staff, always described the same way. Always that same bare, dim, numberless floor. I still take the stairs whenever I possibly can in that building, even years later, on the rare occasion I have a reason to visit downtown Denver again.